My name is Talia, and at 28 years old, I'm lying in a hospital bed with 3 broken ribs and a truth that nobody believes. Just 48 hours ago, I survived a 40-foot fall from Silver Falls, but that's not the part that keeps me awake at night. The man who pushed me, who watched me fall with cold calculation in his eyes, is my husband, Marcus, the same man who promised to love and protect me just 1 year ago. Before I share what really happened that day, let me know where you're watching from. Please like and subscribe if you believe everyone deserves to know the truth about the person they marry. 2 years ago, my life looked completely different. I was working as a cardiac nurse at Presbyterian Hospital in Denver, loving my job, surrounded by friends, and genuinely content with my single life. That all changed when I attended the annual Colorado Healthcare Management Conference downtown. I wasn't even supposed to be there. My colleague Sandra had gotten sick at the last minute, and our head nurse asked if I could represent our department. Marcus stood out immediately in that crowded conference room, 6'2", with dark hair that had just the right amount of grey at the temples, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that suggested success without screaming it. He was presenting on innovative patient care models, and I found myself captivated not just by his ideas, but by the passionate way he delivered them. His hands moved expressively as he spoke, his voice carrying this perfect blend of authority and warmth that made everyone in the room lean forward. During the coffee break, I was struggling with the temperamental espresso machine when I heard a voice behind me. "Let me help you with that. These machines require a special touch." Marcus reached around me, did something magical with the buttons, and within seconds, perfect espresso was flowing into my cup. "I'm Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "I noticed you during my presentation. You were the only one actually taking notes instead of checking your phone." That made me laugh. "Talia," I replied, shaking his hand and feeling a jolt of electricity I tried to ignore. "And I was taking notes because your ideas about patient advocacy were actually revolutionary. Most administrators just talk about numbers." His eyes lit up. "You get it. Finally, someone who understands that healthcare is about humans, not just statistics." We talked through the entire break, continuing our conversation over lunch, then dinner, then drinks at the hotel bar. By the time I finally looked at my phone, it was past midnight. Marcus walked me to my car, asked for my number, and called me before I even made it home to make sure I'd arrived safely. Our courtship felt like something out of a romance novel. Marcus pursued me with an intensity that was both thrilling and slightly overwhelming. Flowers arrived at the nurses' station every Monday. He'd drive the hour from Colorado Springs to Denver just to have lunch with me. When I mentioned casually that I'd never been to the opera, he surprised me with season tickets to the Denver Opera House. He remembered every detail I shared, from my favorite wine to my mother's birthday. My friends were divided. Jennifer, my best friend since nursing school, thought Marcus was too good to be true. Nobody's that perfect, Talia. What's his deal? But others, like my roommate Amanda, were completely charmed. "You deserve someone who treats you like a queen," she'd say, admiring the latest bouquet Marcus had sent. 6 months into our relationship, Marcus planned an elaborate proposal. He told me we were attending a medical fundraiser at the Opera House, so I wore my best dress, a deep blue number I'd bought specifically for our fancy dates. But when we arrived, the building was empty except for a string quartet on stage. Marcus led me to the center of the hall, got down on one knee as the musicians played Pachelbel's canon, and presented a 3-carat diamond ring that must have cost more than my annual salary. "Talia," he said, his voice echoing in the empty hall, "you've transformed my life from a series of days into a journey worth taking. Will you marry me How could I say anything but yes? The ring was perfect. The setting was perfect. Marcus was perfect. My few doubts seemed petty in comparison to this grand gesture of love. The wedding planning consumed the next 6 months. Marcus insisted on the best of everything. His family old money from Boston flew out to meet me. His mother, Eleanor, was a refined woman who wore pearls to breakfast and seemed perpetually surprised that her son had chosen a nurse instead of someone from their social circle. His father, William, was warmer but distant, more interested in discussing hospital acquisitions with Marcus than getting to know his future daughter-in-law. 2 weeks before our wedding, my great-aunt Dorothy passed away unexpectedly. She'd been more like a grandmother to me, the one who'd encouraged me to pursue nursing, who'd sent care packages through college, who'd been the first person I'd called when I passed my boards. Her death hit me hard, but there was another shock coming. Dorothy had left me everything: her house in Boulder, her investment portfolio and cash assets totaling just over $500,000. Marcus was incredibly supportive during my grief, but I noticed his increased interest in the financial details. "You need to be smart about this windfall," he said one evening, rubbing my shoulders as I went through Dorothy's papers. "Maybe we should meet with my financial advisor, make sure everything's properly protected." That led to a conversation about insurance. Marcus suggested we both get life insurance policies. "It's what responsible married couples do," he said. "God forbid anything happens to either of us, we want to make sure the other is taken care of." It made sense at the time. We were young and healthy, so the premiums were reasonable. Marcus suggested $2 million for each of us. "With your inheritance and my assets, we need to protect our estate," he explained. Our autumn wedding was everything I'd dreamed of and more. 200 guests gathered at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. The aspens had turned gold, creating a stunning backdrop for our outdoor ceremony. I walked down the aisle to a live string quartet, my dress a flowing creation of silk and lace that cost more than I'd ever imagined spending on a single garment. Marcus waited at the altar, tears in his eyes, looking at me like I was his entire world. The first few months of marriage were blissful. We moved into Marcus's house in Colorado Springs, a stunning 5-bedroom colonial in the Broadmoor area. He'd lived there alone since his divorce 5 years earlier, he said, but he let me redecorate to make it ours. I threw myself into nesting planning dinner parties, joining the country club where Marcus was a member. But subtle changes began creeping in. Marcus started asking where I was going every time I left the house. He'd call multiple times during my shifts at the hospital, getting irritated if I couldn't answer immediately. "I just worry about you," he'd say. "Is it wrong to want to know my wife is safe?" He installed a tracking app on my phone for emergencies. He had opinions about my friends, especially Jennifer. "She's single and bitter," he'd say. "She's trying to poison you against marriage because she's jealous." When I defended her, he'd sulk, withdrawing affection until I apologized for choosing friends over family. The control escalated gradually. Marcus started checking our credit card statements, questioning every purchase. $40 for lunch with Jennifer? That seems excessive. He'd phrase things as suggestions that felt like commands. "Maybe you should skip book club this month. We barely have time together as it is." Soon I was seeing my friends less and less, making excuses for why I couldn't attend gatherings. 8 months into our marriage, I was putting laundry away when Marcus's phone buzzed on the dresser. The screen lit up with a text from someone named Natalie. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place." My stomach dropped. When I confronted Marcus that evening, he barely looked up from his laptop. "Natalie's a former colleague from Boston. She's in town for a medical conference. We're having a business lunch to discuss a potential partnership with her hospital." His explanation was smooth, reasonable. He showed me emails about the conference, her LinkedIn profile showing she was indeed a hospital administrator. "I can't believe you'd think I was cheating," he said, looking hurt. Is this about your parents' divorce? Are you projecting their issues onto us? My parents had gone through an ugly divorce when I was 16, my father leaving for his secretary. Marcus knew it was a sore spot. I apologized, feeling foolish for jumping to conclusions. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Marcus's mood swings became more pronounced. He'd be charming and affectionate one day, cold and critical the next. Nothing I did was quite right. The dinner was overcooked or undercooked. The house wasn't clean enough, or I was obsessing over cleanliness. I talked too much at parties, or I was too quiet, and made him look bad. Physical incidents started happening, always explainable as accidents. Once, as I was carrying laundry downstairs, Marcus came up behind me, quickly startling me. I stumbled, nearly falling down the entire flight, catching myself on the railing just in time. "You should be more careful," he said, stepping over me as I sat shaking on the stairs. These old houses have dangerous stairs. Another time we were driving to dinner when Marcus suddenly slammed the brakes. My head snapped forward, hitting the dashboard hard enough to leave a bruise. "Dear," he said simply, though I hadn't seen anything. "Good thing I have quick reflexes." I found a travel brochure for Costa Rica in his jacket pocket while doing laundry. When I asked about it, he laughed. "That must be from the travel agent at the mall. They're always pushing those timeshares. I probably grabbed it by accident with my receipt." Jennifer tried to talk to me during one of our increasingly rare coffee dates. "Talia, you've changed. You're jumpy. You're constantly checking your phone. You look exhausted. What's going on?" "Marriage is just an adjustment," I said, forcing a smile. "Marcus has particular ways he likes things done." "Particular or controlling?" she asked bluntly. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're disappearing. When's the last time you did something just for yourself?" Her words stung because they were true, but I was too deep in denial, too committed to making my marriage work. I'd watched my parents' marriage fail, and I refused to be a divorce statistic. The final red flag before our anniversary was Marcus suggesting I take a break from work. "You're so stressed, honey. Why don't you take some time off, focus on us, maybe start thinking about having a baby?" The idea of being financially dependent on him made me uncomfortable, but he wore me down with constant arguments about how his salary was more than enough, how I was being stubborn, how I didn't trust him to provide. I gave my notice at the hospital, telling myself it was temporary. My colleagues threw me a goodbye party, Jennifer pulling me aside to slip me $500 cash. "Just in case," she said. "Hide it somewhere. Call it insurance." Without work, I was isolated. Marcus had convinced me to sell my car since we didn't need two vehicles. My days were spent cleaning an already immaculate house, cooking elaborate meals Marcus would criticize, and waiting for him to come home. I started noticing money disappearing from our joint account. When I asked about a $200,000 transfer, Marcus said he'd moved it to a higher-yield investment account. "I told you about this last week. Were you not listening?" I hadn't remembered any such conversation, but Marcus was so confident, so irritated by my question, that I doubted myself. Maybe I had forgotten. I'd been forgetting things lately, or at least Marcus said I was. Conversations, I didn't remember having plans. I'd apparently agreed to arguments that I'd supposedly started. Looking back, I can see the gaslighting clearly, but when you're in the middle of it, when the person you love is telling you your memory is failing, when you're isolated from everyone who might provide a reality check, you start to believe it. You start to think you're the problem, that if you could just be better, smarter, more attentive, everything would be fine. 2 days before our anniversary, I overheard Marcus on a phone call in his office. He was speaking quietly, but I caught fragments. "Everything's in place. Insurance, accident, soon." When I walked in, he quickly ended the call. "Who was that?" I asked. "Hospital board," he said smoothly. "Planning a surprise announcement for the anniversary gala next month." But there was something in his eyes, a coldness I'd glimpsed more frequently lately. For the first time, I felt genuine fear of my husband. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jennifer's hidden emergency money burning a hole in my consciousness from where I'd tucked it behind old photo albums in the closet. October 15th dawned crisp and clear, one of those perfect Colorado autumn mornings where the sky is so blue it hurts to look at. I woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, surprised to find Marcus already up and cooking. He rarely cooked anymore, claiming he was too tired from work. "Happy anniversary, beautiful," he said, carrying a tray laden with breakfast. French toast, made with challah bread, fresh strawberries, orange juice in crystal glasses, we'd received as wedding gifts and never used. The Marcus from our early dating days had returned. "I've been terrible lately," he admitted, sitting on the bed beside me. "Work, stress, family pressure, but that's no excuse. You deserve better." He pulled out a jewelry box from his nightstand. Inside was a diamond necklace, delicate and stunning, exactly the style I loved. "Marcus, this is too much," I started, but he pressed a finger to my lips. "Nothing is too much for you. I want to make things right. Start fresh. That's why I planned something special for today." He clasped the necklace around my neck, his fingers lingering on my skin. For a moment, I let myself hope. Maybe this was the turnaround. Maybe the man I'd married was still in there. Maybe we could salvage this. "Pack light," he said with a mysterious smile. "Hiking clothes and a warm jacket. I'm taking you somewhere special." "Where?" I asked, feeling a flutter of the old excitement. "Silver Falls, where we had our third date. Remember? You said it was where you felt like you could trust me completely." I did remember. It had been a gorgeous spring day, wildflowers blooming along the trail. Marcus had packed a picnic, and we'd sat by the falls for hours talking about our dreams. He'd been so attentive, so interested in every aspect of my life. I'd told him about my parents' divorce, my fears about commitment, my dreams of maybe getting my nurse practitioner degree someday. As I got dressed, I pushed aside the unease in my stomach. Marcus was trying. I should try too. I put on my best hiking boots, the ones with excellent grip that Marcus had bought me for Christmas, layered a tank top under a moisture-wicking long-sleeve shirt, and grabbed my purple North Face jacket. Marcus was loading the car when I came downstairs, a backpack already in the trunk. "I packed water and snacks," he said, "and a surprise for when we get to the top." The drive started pleasantly enough. Marcus had created a playlist of songs from our wedding, and we drove with the windows cracked, letting in the cool mountain air. He reached over to hold my hand at red lights, thumb stroking across my knuckles in a gesture that once made me melt. "Remember our honeymoon?" he asked as we merged onto Highway 24. "That villa in Tuscany, you in that sundress at the vineyard. You bought every wine they recommended." I laughed, the memory genuinely warm. "Because you loved them all. Your happiness was worth any price." We talked about the good times, carefully avoiding any mention of recent months. Marcus was charming, funny, the man I'd fallen in love with. For 40 minutes, I let myself believe in the fairy tale again. An hour into the drive, Marcus pulled into a small roadside liquor store. "Let me grab a special bottle of wine for later," he said. "The Malbec you loved from that restaurant in Vale." While he was inside, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Jennifer. I started to call her back when Marcus returned carrying a brown bag. "Who's calling?" he asked, his tone light but eyes sharp. "Just Jennifer, probably wanting to wish us happy anniversary." "You can call her later. Today is about us." He took my phone, powered it off, and placed it in the glove compartment. No distractions. The gesture should have alarmed me more, but Marcus quickly distracted me by asking about my thoughts on redecorating the guest room. "Maybe a nursery eventually," he suggested, and despite everything, my heart skipped. A baby had been my dream before things went wrong. 20 minutes from Silver Falls, Marcus's phone rang through the car's Bluetooth. He quickly declined the call, but I saw the name flash on the screen, Natalie. "Hospital emergency?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Always is, but today they can handle it themselves." He squeezed my hand. "You're my only priority." As we pulled into the empty parking area at Silver Falls, I noticed how deserted it was. Usually, even in October, there would be at least a few cars, but the lot was empty except for us. "Weekday advantage," Marcus said, reading my expression. I wanted us to have the place to ourselves. He came around to open my door, ever the gentleman, and grabbed the backpack from the trunk. "Ready for an adventure, Mrs. Coleman?" I nodded, pushing down the voice in my head that whispered something was wrong. The morning had been so perfect. Marcus had been so wonderful. I was being paranoid, letting the bad months colour what could be a beautiful day. Marcus took my hand as we started up the trail, his grip firm and warm. The path was exactly as I remembered, winding through towering pines, the sound of rushing water growing louder with each turn. Fallen leaves crunched under our boots, releasing that distinctive autumn scent of decay and renewal. "Look," Marcus pointed to a hawk circling overhead. "Remember you said hawks were good luck on our third date?" I did remember. I'd made up that bit about hawks being lucky because I'd wanted the day to be special, wanted there to be signs we were meant to be. Now the hawk looked more like a vulture to me, but I smiled and nodded. We climbed steadily, Marcus setting a faster pace than usual. My breathing grew laboured, but he didn't slow down. "Come on, we want to catch the best light," he urged, pulling me along. The trail grew steeper, rockier. I noticed Marcus had positioned himself behind me, letting me lead the way up the narrower sections. His hand would occasionally press against my back, supposedly steadying me, but sometimes pushing a bit too hard. "Careful here," he said, as we navigated a particularly treacherous section where the path skirted close to a drop-off. "Wouldn't want any accidents on our special day." Something in his tone made me look back at him. His expression was strange, intense, not quite matching his caring words. But then he smiled that charming smile that had won me over 2 years ago, and I told myself I was imagining things. We reached the top of Silver Falls after 30 minutes of steady climbing. The viewing platform, just a natural rock outcropping with a low wooden rail on one side, offered a spectacular view of the 40-foot waterfall. The water cascaded down in a silver ribbon, crashing into the pool below with a roar that made conversation difficult. "It's beautiful," I said, moving toward the railing to take in the view. The mist from the falls created tiny rainbows in the afternoon sun. Far below, I could see the dark pool where the water collected before flowing downstream. Marcus moved behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. For a moment, it felt like old times, like we were that couple on our third date again, full of hope and possibility. His chin rested on my shoulder, his breath warm against my ear. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his arms tightening around me. "Of course," I replied automatically, though even as I said it, I realized it wasn't true anymore. "Good," he whispered. Then so quietly, I almost missed it over the sound of the falls. "I'm sorry." Before I could process his words or the sudden tension in his body, Marcus's hands shifted from my waist to my shoulders. In one violent motion, he shoved me forward with all his strength. Time slowed down as I pitched toward the edge. My hands shot out instinctively, grasping for anything, finding nothing but air. The wooden railing was too far to the left. My feet scrambled for purchase on the slippery rock, my right boot catching momentarily on a crack before sliding free. I was falling. The world tilted sickeningly as I went over the edge. My stomach lurched up into my throat. The sound of my own scream was swallowed by the roar of the waterfall. This was how I would die on my first anniversary, killed by the man who'd promised to love and protect me. But 3 feet down, my flailing hands caught something, a scraggly pine sapling growing impossibly from a crack in the cliff face. My palms scraped raw as I gripped it, my body slamming hard against the rock wall. Pain shot through my ribs as they connected with a protruding stone, but I held on. My feet scrambled against the cliff, finding a tiny ledge barely 2 inches wide. I pressed myself against the cold rock, gasping, shaking alive. The sapling bent dangerously under my weight, but didn't break. Looking up through tears and spray from the falls, I saw Marcus peering over the edge. Our eyes met. I expected to see horror, panic, regret. Instead, his expression was cold, calculating. He tilted his head slightly, as if solving a problem. "Help me!" I screamed, though part of me already knew the truth. "Marcus, please!" He stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his knees. For a moment, I thought he would get the rope I knew was in his backpack. Instead, he took a step back from the edge. "You should have just fallen," he said, his voice carrying down to me with chilling clarity. "This would have been so much cleaner." "Why?" I gasped, my hands already burning from holding the rough bark. Marcus laughed, a sound I'd never heard from him before, bitter and cruel. "The insurance money, obviously. $2 million. Plus your inheritance, what's left of it. Natalie and I have plans. You were just a means to an end." Natalie, the colleague from Boston. It all clicked into place with horrible clarity. "Your first wife," I gasped. "Did you—" "Patricia was even easier than you," he said, conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather. "She practically jumped, so trusting right until the end, just like you." My arms were screaming, muscles starting to shake. The sapling was bending, more roots starting to pull from the crack. Marcus noticed too. "This works out better, actually," he said. "A traumatic fall, you catching that tree, holding on desperately, then falling anyway. Very dramatic, very tragic. I'll be the grieving widower who tried everything to save you." He actually checked his watch. "I'll give it another 10 minutes before I run down the trail screaming for help. By then, you'll have fallen and likely drowned. If by some miracle you survive the fall, the cold water will finish you. October swimming isn't recommended." "People will know," I said through gritted teeth. "Jennifer knows about you. Your bitter single friend who never liked me. Who'll believe her? I'm a respected hospital administrator. You've been depressed, isolated. You quit your job. Classic signs of suicidal ideation. I've been so worried about you." His voice took on a fake, concerned tone. "I even suggested this hike to cheer you up, to remind you of happier times." My left hand was slipping. The bark had scraped through skin to blood, making my grip slick. I tried to adjust, to find a better hold, but the movement caused the sapling to pull further from the wall. "Goodbye, Talia," Marcus said. "Thanks for the money." I heard his footsteps moving away from the edge, heard them pause, probably checking his appearance, preparing his story. My husband of 1 year was leaving me to die. Rage gave me a moment of strength. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I wouldn't be another Patricia, another victim in his sick game. But the sapling had other ideas. With a crack that sounded like a gunshot, it pulled free from the wall. I fell again, bouncing once off another outcropping that sent lightning through my already damaged ribs. The last 25 feet were free fall, my body rotating so I could see the pool rushing up to meet me. I had just enough time to try to position myself feet first before I hit the water. The impact was like hitting concrete. Pain exploded through my legs and up my spine. The cold was so shocking it drove all air from my lungs. I plunged deep, so deep I couldn't tell which way was up. The current from the waterfall pushed me down, spun me around. My jacket, soaked and heavy, tried to drag me deeper. Panic and survival instinct warred in my oxygen-starved brain. My lungs screamed for air. Dark spots danced at the edges of my vision. Then my feet touched bottom, and I pushed off with what strength remained. I broke the surface, gasping, choking on water and blood from where I'd bitten my tongue. The current immediately caught me, slamming me into a boulder. I wrapped my arms around it, holding on despite the pain in my ribs, making each breath agony. Somehow, I made it to the shallows. I dragged myself onto a narrow, rocky beach, every movement torture. My right ankle was definitely broken or severely sprained. 3 ribs on my left side were either cracked or broken. My hands were shredded. But I was alive. I could hear Marcus, somewhere above, beginning his performance. "Help someone, help my wife," fell. His voice echoed off the canyon walls, full of fake anguish. I had to move. If he came down the trail and found me alive, he'd finish the job. and claim I'd died from my injuries before help arrived. I crawled into the tree line, each movement sending fresh waves of pain through my body. 20 feet in, I collapsed behind a fallen log, unable to go further. That's when I heard voices, not Marcus, but others. A woman's laugh, a man calling to someone named Scout. Probably a dog, hikers, real people, safety. I tried to call out, but only managed a weak croak. I found a stick and started hitting it against a rock, the sharp crack echoing through the trees, again and again, until I heard the dog bark, heard the voices getting closer. Oh my God, Henry, there's someone here. She's hurt. The woman who found me was in her 60s, grey-haired and wearing a rainbow-coloured hiking vest. Her husband was already pulling out his phone, searching for signal. Their golden retriever Scout licked my face as if trying to keep me conscious. "Don't try to move, honey," the woman said, shrugging off her jacket to cover me. "What happened? Are you alone?" "My husband," I whispered. "He pushed me." The woman's eyes widened. "Henry, call 911. Tell them it's attempted murder." Marcus must have heard the commotion, because suddenly he came crashing through the trees. His expression cycled through surprise relief and calculation in the span of seconds. "Talia, thank God, I've been looking everywhere." He started toward me, but Scout growled, placing himself between us. "Stay back," Henry said firmly. He was a big man, former military by his bearing. "She says you pushed her." "She's confused," Marcus said, switching to his concerned doctor voice. "The full head trauma. I was up top when she slipped." "I didn't slip," I managed to say louder. "You pushed me. You said Patricia was easier." Marcus's face went white at his first wife's name. "She's delirious." But Henry and his wife weren't buying it. They kept Marcus at a distance until the rescue helicopter arrived along with park rangers and police. As the EMTs loaded me onto a stretcher, I heard Marcus, still trying to spin his story, his voice growing increasingly desperate. At the hospital, Detective Maria Santos listened to my story while a nurse documented my injuries. The broken ribs, sprained ankle, lacerated hands, bruising consistent with being pushed rather than falling, but it would still be my word against his, without more evidence. I spent 3 days in the hospital, Marcus playing the devoted husband for the staff, while Detective Santos built her case. He brought flowers, sat by my bedside when others were watching whispered apologies that sounded like threats when we were alone. "No one will believe you," he murmured while adjusting my blanket for the watching nurse. "You hit your head, you're confused. I'm trying to help you remember correctly, but I had an advantage Marcus didn't know about." During one of his bathroom breaks, I'd grabbed his phone from his jacket. Face ID didn't work with my swollen face, but I remembered his passcode from watching him type it our wedding date. How romantic. The text messages with Natalie were all there, months of them. Their affair had started before Marcus even met me. I was literally chosen for my inheritance potential and clean health history for insurance purposes. They'd researched victims narrowing down to single women with minimal family good jobs and recent inheritances or expected inheritances. The most damning message was from that morning, "Is it done?" Marcus's reply. "Almost at the location. By tonight, we'll be free. Natalie, can't wait. Costa Rica tomorrow." Marcus booked under the names we discussed. I forwarded everything to my email, Jennifer's email, and Detective Santos before deleting the evidence of my snooping. When Marcus returned, I was lying exactly as he'd left me, playing the confused victim he expected. Jennifer arrived that afternoon, taking one look at Marcus and declaring she wouldn't leave my side. "I'm her healthcare proxy," she announced, producing documents I'd signed months ago and forgotten about. "I'll be making all medical decisions." Marcus tried to argue, but Jennifer stood her ground. She'd brought backup too, my former colleagues from the hospital who arranged for round-the-clock visitors. Marcus couldn't make a move without witnesses. On day 3, I played my biggest card. When Detective Santos arrived with Marcus present, I suddenly remembered something. The liquor store. I said weakly. We stopped at a liquor store, Pine Creek Spirits, I think. Marcus went inside for wine. So, Marcus said, but I caught the flash of concern in his eyes. He was gone a long time. Maybe they have cameras. Maybe they'll show what he bought. Detective Santos made a note. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd already told her about the stop. She'd pulled the footage. It showed Marcus buying not wine, but a bottle of Rohypnol, commonly known as the date rape drug. He'd planned to drug me, making the push easier, but had apparently decided the remote location made it unnecessary. We should also check his phone, I added innocently. He was texting someone named Natalie all morning. She might know something about our hike plans. Marcus stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. My wife is clearly suffering from trauma-induced paranoia. I'm going to speak with the hospital administrator about her care. He never came back. By that evening, police had executed search warrants on Marcus's phone records, our home and his office. They found the burner phone he used to communicate with Natalie about their real plans. They found the Costa Rica tickets. They found research on my great-aunt Dorothy's assets, dated 3 months before I'd even met Marcus at the conference. Most damning, they found searches on his computer. How long does it take to drown in cold water? Waterfall deaths, Colorado statistics. How to contest life insurance suicide clause. Rohypnol detection in corpses after water exposure. When they arrested Marcus at the airport trying to board a flight to Mexico, not Costa Rica, he had $800,000 in cash, from our accounts, my jewelry, and a new identity document. Natalie was arrested at her hotel. Faced with evidence, she flipped, immediately admitting to the affair, but claiming she thought Marcus was just going to divorce me. Her story fell apart when prosecutors showed her the insurance policies she'd helped him research and the fake identities they'd purchased together. But the biggest shock came when Detective Santos told me about Patricia. "We're reopening your husband's first wife's case," she said. "She died at Hanging Lake 5 years ago. Also ruled an accident, also had a large insurance policy. But here's the interesting part. There was another woman before Patricia. In Seattle, Marcus's college girlfriend, Lily Chen. She died in a hiking accident too. 3 women, 3 accidents, 3 insurance payouts. Marcus had been doing this since college, refining his method, getting better at it each time. I was supposed to be his masterpiece. The biggest payout yet, enough to let him and Natalie disappear forever. The trial was a media sensation. "Black Widower," the headline screamed. Marcus, always so concerned with his image, had to sit there as prosecutor after prosecutor detailed his crimes, his greed, his callousness. His parents, the proper Boston family, were destroyed by the scandal. His hospital fired him and sued to recover bonuses based on fraud. I testified for 6 hours, walking the jury through our relationship, the control, the isolation, the push. The defense tried to paint me as a woman scorned, making up stories, but the evidence was overwhelming. The texts, the searches, the drugs, the tickets, the pattern of dead wives and girlfriends. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, theft. When they read the verdict, Marcus finally showed real emotion rage. He screamed that I'd ruined everything, that I was supposed to die, that Natalie would betray him just like I had. The judge sentenced him to life without parole, consecutive sentences ensuring he'd never walk free. Natalie got 25 years as an accomplice. As they led Marcus away, he turned to look at me one last time. I stared back, no longer the naive woman who'd fallen for his charm. The healing process was longer than the trial. Physical therapy for the ankle took 4 months. The ribs healed wrong the first time and had to be rebroken and set properly. My hands required skin grafts where the scarring was too severe, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the psychological trauma. I moved to Portland, needing distance from Colorado and all its memories. Jennifer helped me find a small apartment near the hospital where she'd transferred. I couldn't afford much after the legal fees and with most of my inheritance tied up in civil proceedings against Marcus, but it was mine, and that's all that mattered. Therapy helped, though. It took 3 therapists before I found Dr. Sarah Kim, who specialized in survivors of intimate partner violence. She helped me understand that what happened wasn't my fault, that Marcus had been a predator who'd specifically chosen and groomed me. You survived, she reminded me during our sessions. Not just the fall, but years of psychological abuse designed to break you down. You're not a victim, you're a survivor. I started attending a support group for domestic violence survivors. Hearing other stories sharing mine helped piece together my shattered sense of self. These women understood the guilt, the shame, the constant second-guessing of every memory. Slowly, I rebuilt. I returned to nursing, starting part-time at first, then gradually increasing my hours. My colleagues knew my story, everyone did, but they treated me with respect rather than pity. I was good at my job, and that competence helped restore my confidence. 2 years after the fall, I met Daniel at a bookstore. He was reaching for the same copy of a mystery novel, and we laughed at the coincidence. He was a middle school English teacher, soft-spoken and gentle, in a way that should have triggered my alarm bells, but didn't. We started as friends, meeting for coffee to discuss books. Daniel never pushed, never demanded. When he learned about my past, he simply said, "Thank you for trusting me with that," and continued treating me exactly the same. Our first kiss happened 8 months after we met in the rain outside the bookstore where we'd first encountered each other. It was nothing like the passionate, overwhelming kisses with Marcus. It was soft questioning, respectful. Daniel pulled back to check if it was okay, and when I nodded, he smiled like I'd given him the world. We married 3 years later in a tiny ceremony in his parents' backyard. 20 people, including Jennifer as my maid of honor. No grand gestures, no overwhelming displays. Just Daniel crying as I walked toward him in a simple sundress, promising to love and respect me, never to control or possess me. Our daughter Emma was born 2 years after that. Holding her for the first time, I thought about cycles, about breaking them. She would grow up knowing her worth, knowing that love shouldn't hurt, shouldn't diminish you. Daniel sings to her every night, reads her stories about brave princesses who save themselves. Last month marked 10 years since Silver Falls. I still have nightmares sometimes, still flinch at unexpected touches from behind, but I also have a life Marcus tried to steal from me. I have real love, the kind that builds you up instead of tearing you down. I have a career I'm proud of, friends who stood by me, a daughter who looks at me like I'm her hero. Marcus is still in prison. He sends letters sometimes forwarded through my lawyer. I don't read them. They go straight into a file for documentation. Natalie was released early for good behavior but violated parole by trying to contact me. She's back inside for another 5 years. Patricia's family successfully sued Marcus's estate for wrongful death. Lily Chen's parents did the same. There's no money left, but they got justice closure. We stay in touch, a sad sisterhood of those who loved a monster. I returned to Silver Falls once 5 years after the fall. Daniel came with me, holding my hand as I stood at the top, looking down at where I'd caught that sapling. The tree was gone, the cliff face bare. A new railing had been installed, sturdy and high. A small plaque read, "In memory of those lost to violence, may we all find strength to survive." I think about the woman I was so desperate for love that I ignored every warning sign. I don't blame her anymore. She did the best she could with what she knew, and when it mattered most, when death was certain, she held on. She fought. She survived. That's the thing about falling. Sometimes you discover you can fly. Sometimes the person who promises to catch you is the one who pushes. But sometimes, if you're lucky and strong and refuse to let go, you catch yourself. You save yourself. And in the end, that's the only rescue that really matters. I still wear my scars, physical and emotional. My hands will never be smooth again. My ribs ache when it rains. I can't hear rushing water without my heart racing, but I'm alive. I'm free. Marcus thought he was pushing me to my death, but he actually pushed me toward my life. My real life, the one I was always meant to have. Sometimes the person who promises to catch you when you fall is the very one planning to push you. But I learned that even from the deepest fall, we can rise stronger, wiser, and finally free. The water that was meant to be my grave became my baptism, washing away the woman who trusted too easily and revealing the survivor underneath. My name is Talia Coleman Sanders now. I kept Coleman as a reminder, sandwiched between my maiden name and my new married name, a reminder that I survived Marcus Coleman, that I won, that every breath I take, every laugh I share with my daughter, every kiss I give my husband is a victory Marcus never thought I'd have. If you're watching this and something resonates, if you recognize your own relationship in my story, please know that those warning signs you're seeing are real. That voice telling you something's wrong isn't paranoia. It's your survival instinct. Listen to it. Reach out for help. You deserve love that doesn't hurt, doesn't diminish you, doesn't require you to become smaller to fit someone else's needs. Have you ever ignored red flags in a relationship that later turned out to be warning signs? What made you finally see the truth? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like and subscribe to help others who might need to hear it. Share this with someone who might be struggling, someone who needs to know they're not alone, that survival is possible, that there's life and love and joy waiting on the other side of leaving. Thank you for listening to my story. May you always have the strength to catch yourself when you fall and the wisdom to know who truly wants to help you fly.